Welcome to episode 60 of the Mindful Marketer Livestream. Can you believe it's episode 60 and it's the same as my age? But maybe I digress. Maybe we should not talk about my age today. And sometimes it's a little bit of a testy subject with me. But anyway, I'm really glad you're here today. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I am going to speak with you today about learning out loud. Learning out loud as a CMO. What are the table stakes for being a relevant, dynamic, and promotable CMO? Reminding everyone to let us know you're here. Tell us where you're from in the chat, because today we have the luxury of taking some live questions. So today being Friday, I'm feeling like it's a great day to put aside time for learning and growth. So there are three things I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about how do you set the table for learning as a marketing executive. Secondly, how do you identify the gaps in your learning that need to be addressed? And third, what are some of my favorite resources and some of the favorite resources of my best, most effective clients? And why is this so important? I just returned from a great trip to New York. I not only was able to be in the film studio with EBSCO and create 8 new mini courses for marketers and leaders, I also attended the Future of Everything conference in New York City, sponsored by the Wall Street Journal. And I really enjoyed myself immensely. I also learned a lot. There are a lot of conversations happening at this conference that really prompted me to realize the R word is in the zeitgeist right now. And you know what I'm talking about. And I heard that CEO of Wells Fargo, Charlie Scharf, said that we are experiencing a downward economic cycle. We also heard from Tim Draper, a very well-known venture capitalist, who said, quote, "We are on a slide until the Fed can feel comfortable that inflation is under control." And then I also had a front row seat to listen to Fed Chief Jerome Powell, and his quote was, "The natural unemployment rate should decline, and that should reduce wage and price pressure." So while he did not come right out and say we are on the brink of a recession, he said there are some metrics that they are watching moment to moment to figure out when to adjust and raise the prime again. So we have to be ready. We have to be ready for the recession, not only in our mindset, but we have to be ready to think about how are we going to contribute profitable growth to our organizations. So for those of you who are saying, I just heard from someone today who works for a large professional services firm, this VP of marketing. They said, "I'm too busy fighting fires to think about the future. I'm too busy fighting fires to put time aside to work on my career." Those kinds of attitudes are what will hold you back. And I'm here to invite you to consider other means of learning and other ways to allocate your time. So with that, let me talk to you also about a website. Just if you need evidence of what's coming and you want to alert your CEO and your board about how they want to better prepare for the session, the way that you stay on the vanguard of that you stay several steps ahead of your competitors, is you also look at a website called layoffs.fyi. If you're looking at competitors or peer companies, here are some interesting statistics. The startup Better just went ahead and announced a 33% workforce layoff. Cameo, known for all the home of celebrities who want to monetize their celebrity, they announced a 25% reduction in workforce. Now, the ones getting a lot of attention announced layoffs like Netflix, but they only announced a 1% layoff of the workforce. So again, you got to take some of these announcements and sensational stories in the media with a grain of salt. So the layoffs are happening, some to a greater degree than others, but the people with great marketing and sales engines are not most likely going to announce 33% layoffs. And I don't want you to be one of those casualties. So let's get started. Let's look first at the qualities of an effective marketing leader who believes in the power of learning. It starts with 3 capabilities. And for those of you that did not attend our last couple of live streams, I dedicated an entire live stream to the topic of the on-ramp to becoming an effective CMO. But no matter where you are in your career, this model can be very helpful. Look at the 3 qualities you need, because these are what I call the mindset to learning as a marketer. You need 3 things. You need courage, you need curiosity, and you need discipline. And underneath these qualities, first of all, I look at courage. The courage is your willingness to cultivate a culture of experimentation. Now, that is great if you can do it on your team, but you have to start with yourself. Where are you conducting small life experiments? I just was on my 100 coaches call this morning, and one of the women I really, really admire is her nickname that she likes to call herself is Kite Girl. She and her husband love kite surfing, and that informs her work. That informs her ability to respond to a crisis, her ability to adapt as the winds change and the weather patterns are different. And the same is true for a person who has courage. You have to have the courage to be able to step back from your day-to-day work and find inspiration in risky situations. And in her case, it's kite surfing. So getting out of living your life from the neck up and finding other ways to have adventures in your life and taking some prudent risk. Number 2 is we talk a lot about curiosity. I could spend like an entire live stream talking about curiosity. It first begins with creating the conditions for learning. You're probably wondering, Lisa, this is really rudimentary. I mean, the conditions for learning, what are you talking about? One of my favorite courses online is from Coursera, and it's called Learning How to Learn. And I think 11 million people have downloaded this class. It's very good. And the scientists who are teaching the class talk about 2 very distinct forms of learning. So ask yourself this, where do I put aside time for what they call focused learning? And where do I put time aside for diffused learning or diffuse learning? So focus modes you already know about. Many of you probably even use the Pomodoro technique to set aside, say, 13 minutes or 27 minutes to write that very important job description or to put together a customer newsletter. That requires focused time, turning off your phone, closing your door at your WeWork office or at your home office, and being able to really be in that zone of creativity. Diffuse learning is very interesting, and it is when you make time to be bored. It's when you allow your brain to go off into what I call big picture thinking, and just allow that mind to wander and kind of rearrange your brain's neurological filing cabinet on its own. Two people who did this extremely well were Thomas Edison, who would sit back in a lounge chair and he would hold in his hand some ball bearings, and he would just sit and rest. Thank God this is way before the internet, way before we would get distracted with our mobile phones. And he would sit in his chair and rest, and he would ultimately and eventually fall asleep. And the ball bearings would hit the floor, and his diffuse learning would be over, and he would get up and then go back to his metaphorical drawing board. Another person who did something very similar was the quirky artist Salvador Dali, who did something very similar and would sit back and, he used to hold a key in his hand and fall asleep and nap and then drop the key and again revert back to his painting and photography, which was more focused learning. So I would ask you, and if you're listening to this and you want to pause this for a moment, how do you design time for diffuse learning in your day? I know for myself, I have diffuse learning when I sleep, and I know that there's a period of time during my sleep cycle that I can feel myself and observe myself sifting things through and grabbing ideas from disparate sources. And another place that I do my diffuse learning is when I'm swimming, whether I'm swimming open water or I am swimming in the pool with the masters team every week. And I love that because I have been swimming since I was 4. I took lessons at a very young age. And when I'm in the pool, I don't have, it is so natural for me to just swim endless laps. And then it's just so natural that I'm able to get into a rhythm and allow my brain to wander. And that's actually where I came up with my company's name, Energize Growth. I remember the afternoon in the pool in Solana Beach, California, Friday afternoon, sunny day, and I was just daydreaming in the pool, and I went, this is the name of my business, Energize Growth. And it stuck. So to me, this is kind of a gateway. It's a no-go point. If I'm not able to create both modes of learning into the lifestyle I've designed, it's very hard to move forward and design any possible future. And that's, again, what keeps a lot of marketing leaders I have met stuck in this problem-solving mode of handling my emails, handling my inbox, dealing with the day-to-day vicissitudes of life. They will not get you promoted. Okay, enough of that. Number 2, another thing about mindset is having a growth mindset. And everyone has heard of Carol Dweck and her series of books about the power of the growth mindset. This is what made her famous. And I will never do justice to her seminal book other than to say this was one of the first people who taught me the importance of the willingness to fail, the willingness to take calculated risk, and then the ability to step back and say, okay, what did I learn from that experience? So Carol Dweck is really effective at teaching us the power of the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset of, I failed. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. What am I going to do next? So this is a very big shift in and retraining our neural networks to look at failure and experimentation as an asset, not a liability. And number 3, another area and a way to recalibrate your mindset is to learn the mechanics of strategic thinking. And I love this. If you want more detail on creating a framework for strategic thinking, look no further than my friend Dory Clark, who has dozens of courses on LinkedIn Learning. And she has 3 different courses on strategic thinking. And I highly encourage you to check out her courses for a little bit more framing around why it matters, how to break it down into pieces, and then how to every day apply strategic thinking concepts to your life. And then finally, getting your mindset revved up for being an effective marketer and learning on a daily basis and making it, part of your being is just how are you feeding yourself? Now, I mean, what are you doing on a regular basis to cultivate healthy sleep habits, diet, movement, exercise, and from that, how it fuels you to be the smart person that we know you can be. A couple things I've been trying out is keeping a very predictable sleep schedule, which usually doesn't vacillate more than 20 minutes to even on the weekends. I keep the same kind of sleep schedule. And I've been experimenting with intermittent fasting. And that's been working really, really well for me. My sleep is not as disrupted as it was when I would pull out my cookies and my ice cream at 10 o'clock at night. That was not working well for me. So having that 14-hour window where I allow my body to simply relax and not have to digest any food has worked extremely well for me. Again, a caveat, I am not a doctor. I do not play one on live streams. I'm simply sharing some things that work for me. Keep that in mind. Okay, great. Let's move on to a couple of things that you need to know about your own professional development plan. And that is figuring out, well, what worked before the pandemic, what I knew before the pandemic may be outdated. How do I figure out where the gaps are in my career as a marketer? So what I would invite you to do is go to my website, and I've come up with 13 habits and qualities that I have discovered among my most successful clients that make them modern thinking marketers. And there is a quiz on my website at lisanorell.com. It takes approximately 2.5 to 3 minutes to complete. And you will find it there. It's called the Digital CMO Quiz. You do not have to be a CMO to take the quiz, and it will give you some instant feedback. But I'm going to give you a few things you can ask yourself to see if you are prepared, if you are learning the right skills and qualities to be an effective modern marketing leader. For example, have you cultivated a culture of psychological safety and transparency in your organization? Do you have the right team structure to succeed and learn? You know you don't have a great team structure, for example, when you're reporting to I met somebody who runs marketing for a large multifamily company in the United States. And when I dug under the covers to talk to them about working together, I realized that this CMO was doomed for limited career options. Number one, I found out that they did not have a direct line to the CEO. Number two, I found out that they reported to the CFO. And the CFO, you cannot make this up, okay? This particular multifamily company generates over $1 billion a year in revenues. That's B as in boy. And yet their spending authority was $1,500. So again, are you structured in the organization for success, or is there a ceiling that's pushing you down? Number 3, do you truly understand what your customers value? You notice I didn't say, do you truly understand the demographics of your customer base, but do you truly understand what they value? Are you able to rapidly adapt to changing market dynamics? Again, are you prepared for the recession? Are you able to shift gears on some of your marketing initiatives without having to put together a task force and submit requests to IT and wait 6 months because you're part of the backlog? These are things that you have to be able to adapt to quickly. Do you have strategies for creating a hypothesis, setting up dozens, if not hundreds of small, inexpensive experiments? Do you have the ability to deliver value quickly to your stakeholders through the right channels at the right time? And also, do you have governance policies that you share with the whole organization about how they will operate on their various social media profiles, who can speak on behalf of your company, who cannot speak on behalf of your company, and how complaints will be handled? These are all the types of things that maybe you might have some learning deficiencies that I invite you to consider. Now, did you notice I did not ask you, are you an expert at branding? Do you understand all of the nuances of demand gen or content strategy? Because in today's world, those are table stakes. Those are table stakes. I'm talking about things that I'm seeing that distinguish the old-fashioned traditional marketing skills that are table stakes from the futuristic marketers. So again, go back, try that digital CMO readiness quiz at lisanorell.com for some additional examples. So those are some thoughts. We've gone over your mindset. We've talked about finding some potential learning gaps. And now what I want to transition into is, how do you develop your learning plan? How does that look? The first thing I want to share is, please promise me you will not leave this up to an HR person to do it for you. How on earth can we expect someone in HR who's usually paid, okay, I'm going to upset somebody. Usually they are paid to handle compliance and procedures. How many HR people do you know understand the nuances and the rapid changes happening in marketing and leadership right now? The answer is very few, if any. No offense to HR, but this is not an HR responsibility. This is your responsibility. And the other thing I'm going to upset some more people. I see it coming. The pendulum towards total employee empowerment and bending backwards to accommodate every single need of our employees is going to swing back into a more balanced place very soon. Very soon. The layoffs are going to remove the belief system that, our employers are responsible for our happiness and they should bend to every demand that we have. I've been seeing this a lot on LinkedIn, and I think it's a dangerous trend because I think we have autonomy over our futures. Now, employers can certainly enhance those futures, but we are responsible for our lives and for our learning. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who's a member of our Marketing Growth Leaders community. This is an elite group of the best CMOs in the country who are hand-selected to join our peer group. And one of the members is so enterprising. We'll call them Lenny. Lenny is so enterprising that they joined a new employer, and the new employer said, well, we heard, Lenny said, look, I'm a member of the Marketing Growth Leaders, and I want to renew my membership in the group. The employer said, well, You just started with us, and we have a threshold here. We can spend this much on your professional development, but we can't pay for the entire membership. And this leader, Lenny, said, that's okay. I will pay for 50% of it, because I believe this is so important to surround myself with like-minded leaders who come from a whole variety of other industries, who have successfully not only launched great branding and demand gen campaigns, but are capable of sharing ideas with me so we can steal from each other. And they ponied up the money. And to this now, as a result, in the following year, that employer said to Lenny, tell us how big you want us to write the check. Of course, we're going to approve this. So that person, Lenny, took full responsibility for their career and were willing to put their money where their mouth is. And I believe that's the future. And so those are some thoughts. And the other thought I want to share with you is I worked prior to starting my company 21 and a half years ago. My gosh, going back a ways. I was really fortunate. I worked for a company that ultimately got acquired by Oracle. They believed in quarterly professional development goals. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so aggressive. How on earth am I ever going to achieve quarterly professional development goals? Well, I'll tell you something. I love this, put your money where your mouth is. They said, if you do not, first of all, you tell us, Lisa, what are your learning gaps? So they gave me autonomy, which I really, really appreciated. The second thing they said is, well, tell us if you need any funding, what kind of learning courses you want to take. However, you also do need to take some of these other courses online to learn about some of our products. And they were a CRM software company. So they said, you do have to take some of these courses as well. And I did. But what I loved about them is they said, and when you finish these online courses, you will then qualify for 34% of your quarterly bonus. So they made it very much an incentive for Lisa to finish those online courses and pass the quizzes or the tests. And I believe that this company was Siebel Systems. I believe that set the table for me to understand that as leaders, we need to demonstrate to our people that we mean business, that learning is in our blood, and we reward people for stepping forward to invest in learning. So those are some examples I wanted to share with you. I will wrap with a few, not rap as in rap music. I would like to wrap up. I get a lot of questions from my clients around, Lisa, you seem to have a pretty integrated life. You weave in your swimming, your love of your cat, your passion for writing, and your passion for your clients into what you do. And how do you get your ideas? So what I did is I put together the names of some of my favorite resources. I break it down into podcasts, influencers, and CMOs to watch. One of the things that I love are podcasts. So I invest somewhere between 6 and 10 hours a week in podcasts. And yes, I have a podcast of my own called the Mindful Marketer Podcast, which you can certainly listen to on any of your favorite platforms. I also have several people who I consider my podcast avatars. So I'm going to give you 4 of my favorites. The first one is Tim Ferriss, the Tim Ferriss podcast. He gets tens of millions of people listening to his podcast because he gets fascinating people, and he is a life hacker. He tries things all the time, and then he shares what it was like for him, whether it is living on a plant-based diet, psychedelic research, exercise, training. And again, I go back to bringing your whole self to work, bringing your whole self to life. I love that about Tim Ferriss. Number 2, the Pivot Podcast with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. It is irreverent, it is highly intellectual, and it's highly dialed in to the zeitgeist of our society. It shows you how interrelated politics, religion, business, technology, innovation are in this complex world. And they do not pull any punches. They are not looking for likes. Believe me, they are a dynamic duo. So they call themselves the dog and the jungle cat, if that tells you anything. So anyway, love those two. They broadcast twice a week for New York Magazine, I believe. And number 3 is Remarkable People with Guy Kawasaki. We had Guy on our show a few shows back. Make sure you go to lisanorell.com/events and you will get the download. Guy Kawasaki and I have been friends for 20 years, and he has invested 2.5 years in this podcast and attracted some phenomenal people from across the world. I will leave it at that. He's done a very good job at really expanding my mind about the world and people who are making me feel more remarkable. The final podcast I'll mention is called, you're going to be surprised, it's called On Being with Krista Tippett. This is sponsored by NPR. You can find it on National Public Radio. And I love her ability to bring to us her learnings on philosophy, religion, belief systems, and my favorite, when she interviews poets. Let's face it, we're marketers. Communication is at the core of what we do. And to be able to communicate stories through other methods, through our hearts, through poetry, through philosophy, makes us more human. And finally, a couple of influencers I think you need to follow. If you are a marketer, you are dealing with people. The higher you go in your career, the more you have to understand the power of relationships, the power of cultivating great cultures and teams. And the less it matters how familiar you are with artificial intelligence or account-based marketing nuts and bolts, you need to improve your relationship skills. And look no further than a woman who spends all day building relationships, and that is the recruiter by the name of Erica Seidel. She has a podcast as well called The Get. I would follow her and how she is able to help great people find great jobs. I also love Shama Hyder. We have a referral agreement between us because Shama is the queen of social. It's Shama Hyder, Hyder, and she has written a great book that's in multiple printings called The Zen of Social Media Marketing. And she owns a great company called Zen Media Group. She is a force to be reckoned with and has her finger on the pulse of what's coming down the pike in terms of marketing trends and technology trends. Finally, CMO Growth Leaders. I hope you'll remember these names. Miriam Banikaram, look her up. She's the CMO of Nextdoor. Very good at content strategy for her own brand. You can also look up Monique Elliott, who is the Senior Vice President of the company Schneider Industrial Automation. She's the Senior Vice President of Marketing. She's a friend of mine and will be speaking at our annual CMO conference in November. I also encourage you to watch Mayur Gupta. It's Gupta, and he was once the CMO of USA Today and has recently changed roles. Very good at generating fresh ideas on relationship building, strategic thinking, and you'll find him very active on LinkedIn. So those are some ideas on surrounding yourself with avatars, not just podcasts, not just books. Really, you've got to surround yourself with avatars and people whom you aspire to, not compare yourself to, but people who inspire you to think bigger. Well, my friends, we've gone through a lot of content today. I ran over a couple minutes, and I appreciate your staying with me. And just remember, you will never have enough funding, people, or time, but you will always have a choice of how you spend your time building your career. So with that, speaking of which, I hope you'll join us again, because we're going to keep talking about not only building our careers, but building our customer base. On June 3rd, we will have our next LinkedIn Live, episode 61, with my returning guest, Mr. Michael Taylor, the CEO of Simple Mind. And we're going to talk about how do you rise above the noise when no one wants to meet you. With the rising distrust in social media measurement, opaque algorithms and bots, CMOs are witnessing much lower engagement and flat marketing campaigns, even on great platforms like LinkedIn. So these channels are getting really noisy and overcrowded. Michael is going to reveal to us a very simple direct messaging platform that has helped his clients. He has over 110 clients that he has helped generate billions, that's with a B, billions in new business with great customers. I don't want you to miss that session on June 3rd. So that's a wrap today. Remember, you can listen to this live stream again on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Leave us a review if you feel so inclined. We love good reviews if we have earned your trust. And we'll see you again on June 3rd. Make it a great weekend.